the way in which we're going to structure this session is that each of the members of the panel are going to make a short presentation, and we're going to, it's been rather artificially polarized, I think, this panel, because on the right we have the activist community, and on the left we have people who've been far more involved in journalism, albeit in a way which has had an impact which I think would rival any activist and also researcher on the far left. So I think it's kind of rather artificially polarized. But we're going to begin with, you could call it the activist community, and I'm going to introduce Hans Suter, who's the full-time worker with Indie Media, and he's going to make a presentation describing the work that he's been involved in. Han, over to you.
And we try to, well, there's this one way of thinking which accepts the free market, which accepts the new world order. You can criticize it, you can try to make it a little better, but you accept it. And we try to focus on people, on things that are happening that encounter this, that have another view on it. I can go further to explain how the media system works and then how every step of it. For an example, you have journalism, professional journalists. What they do, in fact, is they think for you. They think you're not able to tell your own story. You need a journalist who interviews you, and then he'll tell your story. Whether it's on television, on a website, in a newspaper, you're not able to tell your own story. He'll do it for you. And it's a way to bias, because those journalists, mainly they have studied, they studied on, how should I say it, university, and they think on a certain level, and they think for you, and what they don't think that fits in a newspaper, in a television, they won't allow on their newspaper, they won't allow on their television channel. And it's also a way to bias. So, the first thing, monopoly, who owns our media, Indie Media? Nobody yet. Yeah, I'll go to the website.
Han, I'd always thought of Indie Media as being a tool for mobilizing action. Is that right? Or because the description you give makes it seem like a rival to CNN or something, like a rival media, but I've always thought of the power of Indie Media as being a way of mobilizing global resistance to global capital.
No, it's more than mobilizing. We started reporting. We started not mobilizing for the Seattle events. In fact, the Indie Media Network, as you see it here, the IMC, the Indie Media website, started during the Seattle events, and it started not as a website to mobilize for the Seattle events, it started as a website or as a media center to report on what was happening in the streets. We knew that the media would focus on certain things, let's say the violence, and would not allow all the people in the streets, or would not enable all the people in the streets to tell their story. What were they there for? Which reasons were there in the streets? And the IMC was a way to encounter that, to be able to tell all the stories of the different peoples in the streets. You have now the Bush inauguration met by active dissident. So I have seen only Belgian television yesterday night, 15 seconds on the protesters in the streets. But there was a lot of people in the streets, there was a lot of people protesting this inauguration. Why were those people there? It's a story you will not read, you will not see on CNN, you will not read in your local newspaper. So that's the story we try to tell in Seattle. And that is, and try not to tell it by a bias of a couple of journalists, but try the activist, as I am an activist. I'm telling my story. Why am I in the streets? As a network, we try to enable as much people to tell their story. That's almost the how should I say it? The end of it. We don't only use the website, which you see here. We also use, if it's possible, television, which means by satellite or by cable distribution. If it's possible in Amsterdam, it's possible, it seems. In In America, it's also possible. In Belgium, not here. Crazy. In Belgium, that's not a thing possible. So what we use in Belgium is not only the website, but we organize screenings, which is like we use the video material we made. We use it to do screenings, and that's a mobilizing thing. But what we also do, we have a newspaper. Sometimes, if we have enough money to put out a newspaper to distribute it in Prague during the IMF, we distributed a newspaper. Maybe I'll show you. I prepared a little on the Belgian website, which has some Dutch stuff on it. So the network started in Seattle, but we spread it after Seattle. I was not in Seattle during the event, so I was working a little bit on the website from within Belgium. And we started working, and we met each other afterwards. Only January, we met each other to say, to discuss whether we would continue this or not continue this. And so this is how this network spread around the world. You can see on the left line, you have a website in Europe, you have one in Belgium, France, Italy, Prague and the UK. We have had one in Holland during the climate conference, but it didn't continue. So this is the whole list, and it's not that there are some things missing on the left side. In Belgium we also use both languages, but that's something particular. And we use video, audio. Yeah. I think this is a cartoon, which doesn't work. Great. So how the system works is, in fact, we try to allow as much people as possible to publish their own article on the website by means of a publishing form. This is the English one, but we have it also in Dutch and in French. So if people want to put up an article, you have to give it a title, an author, a little article, and it's straight on the website. The article can be written text, but can also be a video or audio or a picture. And the website is the main thing where things come together. In Belgium we also produced a video on the Prague events, which were 12 people involved in the editing, which means we have not one, how should I, traditionally you have a movie made by one guy, the regisseur, as we call him in Dutch, that director who makes a movie. Well, we had 12 directors who made 12 stories, and we made one movie out of these 12 stories. Because we say we're not objective, media is never objective, so what we try to do is to put as much stories together, which are very subjective, but that gives you an objective view of the events, what happens. That's a little the main idea of the website. Everybody can publish his very own view on the website, but because they're, for an example, in Prague we were with 400 journalists working on the website. Because that's 400 people working on the website, it gives you a pretty good view of what was really happening in Prague. What is happening in Belgium, it's the same thing. We try to involve as much people with different views on this website, so you have a pretty good view of the different kind of activists. What do they have to say? An activist in a big, for us it's large. That can be a youth center, and it can also be anti-WTO.
Is there any streaming material here? Like, can we see any movies? Or?
Yeah, you can see some movies.
And the editing tool you put up, does that mean anybody can go on? Is it a totally unmoderated website, or do you have some of the bad guys writing on there as well?
Yeah. Well, that's very local. In Belgium we said we don't want any racism, yeah, any homophobia, or we don't want any I'll take one of them. It's it's activism against genetical manipulation in Belgium. We'll see if it works. Yeah, everybody can put up an article. We have had an article, we have had the UNICE, which is a lobby group of European, how should I say it, bedrijfsleiders.
Genetisch gemanipuleerde organismen, genetisch gemanipuleerde gewassen die in onze voeding worden verwerkt. Om verschillende redenen. Eerst en vooral zijn er een aantal milieuaspecten aan verbonden. Het feit dat er nog altijd, dat heel moeilijk van tevoren te voorspellen is hoe dat de gewassen die ingebracht worden in een natuurlijk ecosysteem, die zo reageren op termijn en ook hoe dat ecosysteem daarop.
The video you see is made by people who never did any video before. Yeah, it's a beginning, but I think it's important. What we tried to do to explain to people is you're able to tell your own story, and you have to learn it, but it's not so hard, and certainly not with video and television, because we are all from a generation. It's the media we know the best. As a child, we watched hours of television, so we know what is good television and what is bad television. Once you start doing this, you can make your own television, and it's really easy if somebody helps you to say, keep the camera steady, do this, help them a little bit. After a couple of days, people can make their own television program.
By the Clean Clothes campaign, we exist for over 10 years now, and we have affiliates in 9 European countries. And our main aim is to improve the labor conditions in the garments and sportswear industry. And we don't only, well, we are a European-based campaign, but we work closely together with similar organizations in the United States and Australia, and with representatives of workers in production countries, either in Latin America or Asia. And these can be anything. It can be trade organizations, trade unions, or women organizations, or the like. So we are organized according to 4 different principles, which are consumers, companies, and solidarity and legal. And I just go very briefly into that. So I'll start with the consumers. In our campaign, we try to inform and mobilize consumers in order for them to write letters or any way they'd like to do, in order to put pressure on companies saying that they do mind and they want to buy products which are made with respect to labor standards. So we think that this is actually a very good way of putting companies under pressure, you know, for their own clients to have protests against. So I just like to show some examples of educational material. For example, this is the price makeup of a sports shoe. This we use a lot when we give workshops to young people here in the Netherlands. You can see this shoe is made in Indonesia. It costs $100 more or less in the shop. You can see that 50% goes to the store, whereas only 0.4% goes to wages, which is approximately like 1 guilder. And then my other example is of a campaign which we did with the Clean Clothes campaign in Belgium and in Germany. We did a campaign just before and during the Euro 2000 tournament ship, and the aim there was to put pressure on the FIFA and the Euro 2000 committee, and of course also the big brands, in order to implement a good code of conduct. So what we did was, in Belgium, they asked a football club to, here, First Division football club to wear special shirts saying they want living wages, clean clothes, and well, it doesn't matter much. And yeah, well, wasn't the big example anyway. You already saw it. So what we did in the Netherlands, far more important. We went to the 4 cities where the tournaments were being held, and we asked people to have their picture being taken. They could be either an arbiter drawing a red card to protest against violations of labor standards, or they could be, well, like a footballer who makes a goal for better labor conditions. So we got thousands of people joining in this campaign, and in the end we offered them to the Euro 2000 committee and the KNVB. We tried to hand it over as well to the big sponsors of the tournament, which were Nike and Adidas, but they never showed up. Yeah, the second thing I wanted to explain is our solidarity campaign. This is actually based on the urgent appeals. We get a lot of urgent appeals coming from production countries, and that can be anything. It can, it's the use of child labor, slavery labor, not paying wages, or not recognition of a labor union. So what we do then is we try to send out this information to our international network, and we will write letters to the 3 different actors that are involved. It can either be the management of the factory involved, or it can be the government of the country where the factory is based, or, which is most interesting for us, is the company where a factory is producing for. So I'll just give you an example. We don't have nice pictures, but it's just Dutch consumers to write letters to the Dutch brands which were producing in Bangladesh, asking them for health and safety standards. So we think it's very important that we keep international pressure on these companies, which is the 3rd point of our campaign. We drew up a code of conduct together with the organization in production countries, and we try to put enough pressure on companies that they will implement the code. So here is our code, and it is all based on ILO conventions, and it's child labor, living wages, freedom of association, and the hours of work, etc. And the 4th part of our campaign is legal, and that means that we try to, in different countries, we try to have a court case against the company. So if a company is violating labor standards, we try to make a case, but we haven't got to the point yet. So this is actually what we do and how we use the internet.
Here, the independent media requires an independent economy. In other words, the ownership has to be diversified. What we are seeing in the Middle East as a result of this new media, it helps to democratize knowledge, it helps to free Islamic knowledge and certain identities from the dominance of the state. So it creates new spaces for critical thinking. It plays that important role. It also disseminates information, and eventually it leads to pluralization of knowledge. I think it is very important. So what you get in the end, competing and conflicting frames and framing and issues, the way in which they are framed, in a way it forces state to accept some of the discourses of the local people. But there's also a negative aspect of it, that is the denationalization of local issues in favor of the international discourse. That creates problem in terms of it suppresses local concerns and local issues. Sometimes the local issues becomes hostage to international pressure groups or the international NGOs. Let me say one thing about the computer, particularly new computer technology. What it did in the case of India, for instance. Today, some regions of India, or maybe some regions of Indonesia, is more connected to international power centers than their own society. In other words, new technology, the need for computer engineers created these enclaves, highly advanced and developed enclaves, but they are in a way enclaves that they are not connected to the rest of the national society, and these enclaves are sometimes utilized to control the debate and discourse in these countries. Second, these enclaves become network of the brain drain. In other words, the experts in India some of the universities in India are structured in a way to meet the need of the Silicon Valley rather than meeting the needs of the Delhi. So some of these enclaves are more connected to Silicon Valley or maybe Amsterdam, maybe Berlin, than let's say the other provinces of India. So what we are seeing is that the world is becoming smaller. World is becoming a village, but at the expense of what? In other words, what we are seeing is that not equal participation and sharing and utilization of this information technology. In a way, this digital gap between South and North and digital gap within one country in terms of creating highly developed enclaves, I think creates more problem. And we need to be aware of these problems. What to do, I think what needs to be done, to conclude my own short talk, what needs to be done is to establish close ties with local networks and local NGOs. And it is very important to create local email centers. For instance, in here, Bali, you have 2 computers, and it allows people who come here to check their email and maybe read the newspaper. I think it's very important to establish these local centers and local networks and email centers. Second, I think it's very important to create a 3-layer cooperation or connection between expert, scholars, activists, and also the people who are infected or impacted by these problems.